Where does yesterday's future, which is already here, meet today's future, which is about to happen, and tomorrow's future, which could be just minutes away? Welcome to Technology Revolution, the future of now, where host Bonnie D. Graham asks savvy futurists for their predictions about the tech-driven trends that are shaping our future right now. Here's your host, who will take us into the future of now, Bonnie D. Graham.
Ooh, I always get such a kick out of that opening. That's the voice of Ryan Treasure, my co-producer and the VP, I say, of everything at Voice America Radio. Thank you, Ryan. The future of now. We are here. I've got a very interesting topic for you today. Let me just ask my listeners. You can't answer me, but I hope you're thinking about an answer. Are you depressed when you go on Facebook and everybody is so wonderful and happy and gorgeous and has successful lives? Are you looking at Pinterest and saying, I don't have anything interesting to post? Are you being basically just put under the gun to be someone else or to think a different way when you go on social media? Well, I have news for you. You might not need a therapist like walk in, sit on the couch, yes, Freud, or do anything like we always used to do, talk therapy, couch therapy, medical therapy, but there's now something called CyberPsychology. Aha! And it functions in a couple of ways. One, it's there for you remotely, and two, it's to talk about what's happening with us and the internet. So let me read a definition here. According to Wikipedia, yes, there's already an entry on Wikipedia. Cyberpsychology, aka internet psychology, web psychology, and digital psychology, is the study of the human mind and behavior and how the culture of technology, specifically virtual reality and social media, affect us. Oh my. Hot topics. These might be something that's bothering you. Online identity. Who are you and who do you want to be? Who were you? Can you get rid of that person? I don't know. Online relationships. Well, cyber dating. I think a lot of people, I didn't say us, have been doing that for years. Personality types in cyberspace. Do you have an avatar? Do you have a clone? Do you have somebody you would like to be in another world? Transference to computers. We all saw the movie Her. Addiction to computers and internet. I won't go there. Regressive behavior in cyberspace, online gender switching, and a lot more. And by the way, media psychology is also an emerging specialty. And there's also cyber psychiatry, which covers virtual reality, telepsychiatry, transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's giving me a headache. And chatbot therapists. Oh my. So with a rising number of internet and computer users around the world, computer technology's effects on our human psyche will significantly shape our interactions with each other and our perceptions of the world. Literally tap, tap, tap on that keyboard at our fingertips. I have 4 specialists, experts, really savvy people who are passionate about this topic, and they're going to help take us through this new world of cyber psychology. So we're calling it cyber psychology. What would Dr. Freud say? He might turn over in his grave. We don't know. He's probably done that a lot recently. So I'm going to tell you my panelists are Chris Kalaboukis. We're welcoming him back. He was on a little while ago. Linda Roth, also Linda J. Roth, the real Linda J. Roth is with us. Jacob Perkins is with us. And Roberta A. Moore. Roberta is our newcomer. Welcome to my wonderful panel. I'm on Zoom. I can see them. They all look fabulous. So I get to see their nuances and their emotions. I get to watch them think. How about that? So we will convey that verbally to the audience. Welcome again. This is Technology Revolution, the future of now, and I'm Bonnie D. Graham. Chris Kalaboukis, welcome back. And Chris, why don't you take a couple minutes and tell us who you are just in case there's 2 people in the whole world who didn't hear you when you're on the show recently, and there might be a half of a person who already didn't know who you are. So talk to that 1.5 persons. Go ahead, Chris.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Bonnie. Thanks for having me on again. This is great. So my name is Chris Kalaboukis. I'm a philosopher, engineering futurist. That's right. I have a weird combination of events, pulling myself together, my personality. And I run a company called Hello Future, which is specializes in bringing companies into the future. We help them sort of map out where the future is for them, their customers, their products and services, et cetera. So I've been doing this for, I don't know, maybe about 20, 30 years. I've always been a futurist. I've always been interested in the future. When I was a kid, I would be underneath the covers reading science fiction novels with a flashlight, just making sure that I wanted to live in the future worlds that I've been seeing. So that's what I made my profession.
Thank you very much. What's your quick take, Chris, about cyberpsychology? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? Is it the future? Is it something we should all be signing up for? Is there a virtual couch? Talk to me.
Sure. Let me ask you something. If there was a actual psychoactive drug that you could take that whenever it sensed the difference in your mood, it would actually change its chemical composition to make you happy or sad, like on the fly, right? If there was a drug like that, we would probably be banning it. We'd probably be saying, this is terrible. We have a war on drugs on it. But you know what? That's what social media is today. So social media is a constantly changing outrage machine that just drives your emotions to a higher and higher pitch. So a lot of the technology that we're talking about that helps to save us in cyberpsychology is actually stuff that we've done to ourselves through being addicted to these technologies.
Thank you very much. Good overview. And now let's go to our second panelist, welcoming back Linda J. Roth. Linda, so nice to see you again, and you look wonderful. And please introduce yourself to that 1.2 people around the world who don't know who you are, don't remember. And what's your passion for this topic, Linda?
Well, thank you very much, Bonnie, for having me back again. I've enjoyed being on your show. We've covered a lot of different topics. Like Chris, I've been in technology since the very beginning, but unlike Chris, it wasn't my childhood thing. I sort of fell into it when I went to college and didn't know what I was going to do. And some far-thinking counselor suggested I go and take information technology. And so I've been in it since the very early years. And for the last 30 years, I've been helping companies transform themselves through the various stages of technological change. And I've just written a book. It'll be published in the next few weeks called Digital Transformation, How to Survive and Thrive in the Digital Economy.
Very cool. What do you say? Cyber psychology a real deal, Linda, or is it just something that people are talking about?
No, I think it is a real deal. As with anything, there's pros and cons to technology and to things like social media, et cetera. And more interaction. I think one of the biggest things is as we move forward in technology, especially with artificial intelligence, we're going to have more and more interaction with computers and technology. And so it's going to bring advantages and disadvantages. And so cyberpsychology helps work through those things.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Jacob Perkins. Jacob, you're all green on your video and you look like you're in a setting from, I don't know what kind of a movie, but it's very dramatic.
The
Hulk. Here's me. Jacob.
He's the Incredible Hulk.
He's incredible.
You wouldn't like me when I'm mad.
Well, keep it incredible. Jacob, please reintroduce yourself to my audience.
Hi, my name's Jacob. I am a millennial who was born right at I would say the perfect time for understanding digital transformation. Companies were changing. I had a background in globalization. Globalization was taking a larger precedence. And I'm also a practitioner working with frontline staff in healthcare industries. So for me, my background entails a lot of transdisciplinary work. I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Missouri with a strong background in cyber social work and digital transformation, particularly in healthcare. So for me right now, seeing how the pandemic is reshaping a lot of our healthcare service lines, that's kind of bringing home what the impact of digital transformation is for the consumer, especially with healthcare consumers. Yeah.
Jacob, would you think that cyber psychology is something people would be lining up for in terms of, well, let's just talk about the practicality of not being able to go to a doctor's office right now and you need to talk to somebody, pick up the phone, go on Zoom, go on Skype, go on Teams. Is this something that's gaining in popularity already?
It's gaining in popularity if you count the number of peer-reviewed journal articles across formal journals that are identified as being for cyber psychology. I think theoretically there's a lot of missing pieces with defining what the actual discipline is because it's so transdisciplinary, right? There's clinical psychologists working on research teams with IT developers trying to figure out how what we're doing has an impact on neurocognitive systems. So we're still kind of defining what the scope of this discipline is, but it's definitely needed moving forward.
Thank you very much. And now our newcomer to the panel, Roberta A. Moore. She's smiling, she's waving. Can't wait to meet her. Roberta, please tell us what you do and what is your passion for the topic and talk to me.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm a former CPA turned licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as executive coach. So I'm the founder of Conscious Choices Corporation and also the EQI Coach. So I have two lines of service. One is a psychotherapist and the other as an executive coach. And I specialize in emotional intelligence. So that's the ability to manage, contain, control, and use your emotions in a positive way. And that drips over into my couples therapy as well. I'm licensed in 3 states. And the reason I mention that is because it drifts into my passion about this topic. Jacob already touched on it, so thank you, Jacob. When I was moving my practice from North Carolina to St. Louis, that was about 7 or 8 years ago, my colleagues were horrified that I was going to do what was called telemental health. My clients in North Carolina wanted to stay with me, and I had to get extra training for that at that time. Now these things are being relaxed because of COVID and the pandemic. And I'm very excited about that.
Very, very interesting, Roberta. That brings into questions, and we'll talk in our predictions round about how you get to be a cyber psychologist. If I just put up a website, Bonnie the Shrink, call me or email me, and I gave a permanent Zoom link, and I said, pick an appointment. You can have 20 minutes with me from 11 to 11:20, and then I need a glass of water, and then 11:30 to 11:40, and then I'll have my lunch, and then I'll tell people when, and they just start signing up, and I have a credit card taker, whatever it is, a Venmo, and they pay in advance, and I give am I allowed to do that, Roberta, or is that still, thank God, forbidden?
No, that is still, thank God, forbidden. Unless you call yourself a coach. There are no regulations in the coaching industry.
Well, that's the issue right now. There's cyber psychological ethics, and it's evolving. And there's YouTube influencers who have seen certain populations need mental health needs, and they've said, if you have anything, just message me, right? So then you see this vulnerable youth. Oh my God, my idol, my influencer that I follow, who has 1 million followers, just told me I can contact them. I'm in distress and I contact them. Well, that person's not necessarily trained. So there was a prominent case 2 weeks ago. This came out in several magazines of that kind of happening. So there's cyber psychological ethics right now that we're having conversations around spaces, places, and who can kind of do what for certain needs.
Very, very interesting. I have a friend who tells me that one of his children, let's just leave it at that, has a thriving coaching business and takes calls 24 hours a day, and it's hooked up to a credit card prepayment system, and people call and just say, okay, I need help, and this person gives them help, and no matter where this person travels or lives around the country or even in Europe, they are available to their quote unquote clients, and they dispense advice on the clock. And I just found that interesting. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I never used it professionally, but I know, and I had a relative who's no longer with us who was a licensed psychologist in the state of New Jersey, and she was horrified about having a Facebook page or having something that would have given too much information. She went strictly by the rules. She's been gone about 3 years now, but she's strictly by the rules. No, I will not be out there. Yes, I will follow the guidelines of the New Jersey Psychological Association. I will not put myself out there for people to know more about me than they need to know. I am a professional. And I know those lines now are all blurring. So let's get to the part of the show. Thank you all for your wonderful introductions. I'm so happy to have you here. And I might be calling all of you for some therapy after the show. Let's see how we do. So let's go to the part of the show where I've asked my panelists to send me a quote from a book, a movie, a song, somebody famous who's about to be famous. I don't know. I'll read a little on the background, and then we'll ask them, just take 2 minutes, please, to explain why you picked the quote and what in the world it has to do with our topic today. And if you're just tuning in, this is Technology Revolution, the Future of Now, number 55. It's been over a year since I've been doing this show, and the topic is cyber psychology. What would Dr. Freud say? Okay, and all kinds of other people who wouldn't believe what we're doing today. So here is the quote. Chris Kalabukas has picked a quote from George Orwell. Those of you might remember him he wrote the allegorical novella Animal Farm and the dystopian novel 1984. He wrote it back in 1949. I won't tell you how old that is. George Orwell, real name Eric Arthur Blair, 1903 to 1950, known by his pen name George Orwell. English novelist, essayist, journalist, critic, known for his lucid prose. Oh, I only wish I could write lucid prose. Biting social criticism, okay? Opposition to totalitarianism, and outspoken support of democratic socialism. He has been ranked in 2008 among the 50 greatest British writers since 1945, and he came in number 2. Here's the quote Chris has selected. The essence of being human is that one does not seek perfection. Ooh, Chris, that's a good one. Talk to me.
So I feel that most people think that human beings are flawed, right? I mean, most people are flawed. I mean, sometimes you see it in religions, such as Christianity, where they talk about original sins, things like that. So we're always seeking to be better. We're always seeking to improve ourselves. I mean, if you go to the self-help section in any bookstore, it's massively overbooked. There's tons and tons of books on everything. And it's a whole industry of people trying to improve themselves, trying to be better. And the thing is that in some cases, we're trying to use technology to improve ourselves. And sometimes we use technology to make ourselves worse. So I'm on the side of taking that technology and actually using it to improve ourselves as humans. So even though Orwell says that we shouldn't seek perfection, I think we all try to seek as much perfection as we possibly can. And I think it's important that we all think about using technology to become better humans.
Chris, I have a question for you on that. When I opened the show, I talked about our people feeling down about looking at all the perfect people on Facebook and on Pinterest and Instagram. And I wish I could make videos like that on TikTok or wherever your friends or your wannabe friends are posting. Do you think that this is an actual phenomenon, this needing to be perfect because everybody I know looks perfect because only post the perfect picture?
Absolutely. So in the days before the internet and days before Facebook, I mean, we only knew about people who are around us, right? You know, keeping up with the Joneses, people in our local area. And now, since we're connected to everybody else on the internet, we can feel envy against everybody else. And envy is a super powerful emotion. It's one of those things human beings really have a tough time pushing back. I mean, you can see it even in monkeys. I mean, it's not just a human thing. And the problem with this is that we see all this great stuff that other people seem to have. And, you know, that's the other thing about Facebook and all these other social media. They very rarely post anything negative. They always post wonderful things about their life. Yep. So everybody thinks everybody else's life is so wonderful. And the problem is that we don't have a buffer between this stuff coming at us and what the tech giants are doing. So the companies like Facebook, they're just trying to get more clicks. They just want more views. So they don't really care how it's affecting my psychological sense, right? So they'll send me whatever they think I want to look at and whatever will bring them more views. But what we really need is an AI buddy to actually help us filter that, to say, you know what, some of these images and some of these things are going to make us unhappy. You know, let's not show them to my human because, you know, that'll make them unhappy. But we don't have that sort of filtering going on right now. We have the tech companies doing the filtering for us, and it's falling way behind.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I stopped going on Facebook for that reason. I was tired of having to spend a half hour every day clicking like or love or hand claps to all the beautiful people and all their beautiful dinner parties where their 25 grandchildren and all the fabulous restaurants they're eating in and all the gorgeous cars they just bought, and how brilliant their niece is, who I can't tell in a picture with 22 people, which is the niece who just graduated from where? I don't know. And frankly, have a good life. Linda J. Roth, let's go to your quote. You sent us a quote from HAL 9000, HAL, everybody who is uninitiated, that is heuristically programmed algorithmic, HAL, computer. First appeared in the 1968 film 2001: A Space Odyssey. HAL is a sentient computer, or general artificial intelligence let me get that backwards. Artificial general intelligence that controls the system on the Discovery 1 spacecraft and interacts with the ship's crew. It's voiced by originally Douglas Rain in the 2 feature films adaptations of the Space Odyssey series, and HAL speaks in a soft, calm voice and a conversational manner. In contrast to the crewmen, here's the quote. I am putting myself, let me see if I can do this like HAL, Linda. I am putting myself to the fullest possible use, which is all I think that any conscious entity can ever hope to do. How'd I do, Linda?
Great, Bonnie.
Too kind.
Well, I picked this quote because we're kind of talking about the interaction of humans and computers, and it's growing. And of course, artificial intelligence is getting close to where HAL is. You know, in 2001: A Space Odyssey, it's taken more than since 2001, but it is coming there. I don't know that I would ever call artificial intelligence a conscious entity, but I picked it because I think that what we as humans, which are conscious entities, do strive to do is to put ourselves to our fullest possible use and be as good as we can possibly be. And I think in the future, as we use artificial intelligence and other technology in a positive way, it will help us to be more than we could possibly be on our own and put ourselves to the fullest possible use.
Thank you very much. Good quote. I appreciate that. Let's go to the quote Jacob has selected from Vincent Freeman. This is a new one for me, Jacob. Vincent Freeman, a fictional character in the film Gattaca. And that is 1997, Gattaca. 1997 science fiction film set in the future where people's life opportunities are determined mostly by their genetic makeup. The film tells the story of a natural-born man, I guess a human like us, who assumes the identity of a genetically engineered one to achieve his dream of becoming an astronaut. Vincent Freeman is navigator first class at Gattaca Aerospace Corporation, but everybody calls him Jerome. He's cheating the system, but it works in the guise of Jerome Morrow. Vincent has quickly risen through the Gattaca's ranks, and he's preparing for a one-year flight to Titan, Saturn's 14th moon. I'm going to stop there. I'm getting all excited. Here we go. Here's the quote. I was never more certain of how far away I was from my goal than when I was standing right beside it. What a beautiful quote. Jacob, talk to me.
Imagine having your goal to be an influencer with money and cars, whether or not this person actually has it, they're depicting it, and getting up each and every morning on your phone, the first thing you wake up and viewing that. So although the process is a little different than in the movie, I think CyberPsychology would say, look at the potency and the frequency with which you can view the desired life you want. Now imagine how that's impacting your neurobiological system. And we already know how it's impacting it. Individuals have central nervous system upregulation on a daily basis, which means that their neural biological connections are elevated chronically, more so. They go down to a rest period, but that rest period is chronically elevated because they're chronically exposed to that stimuli. I look at a screen, I look at the computer, I'm back on my phone, I'm back on my big computer. So I think that process that we see in Gattaca is even more potent right now in our world, just from sheer accessibility and exposure to mobile technology and internet use. Yeah.
Thank you, Jacob. But it reminds me of, well, I won't say a psychologist once told us to me, but what are you reaching for? Sometimes you're right where you're supposed to be. The goal is right there near you. You're at it and you just don't recognize it or accept it. But that's a whole other show, goal setting and achieving. Let's turn to Roberta Moore and Roberta A. Moore. I have to put the A into my notes here. I put it on your name on the video. I want to respect middle initials. I never go anywhere without the D. So there you go. Roberta Moore has sent us a quote from Roberta A. Moore from Carl Jung, his collected works, volume 18, 1407. This must be the page. Carl Gustav Jung, 1875 to 1961. I didn't realize he had died in 1961, so he's almost modern times, really. I consider 1961 recent history. I'm sorry. Don't say a word. Was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded analytical psychology. His work was influential in the areas of psychiatry, anthropology, archaeology, literature, philosophy, and religious studies. They had such wonderful bios for these people. He worked as a research scientist at the famous Burgholzli Hospital under Eugen Bleuler and came to the attention of who else? Dr. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis. The two men conducted a lengthy correspondence, but it wasn't by email, I can tell you that, and collaborated on a joint vision of human psychology. And here we are today. Here's the quote Roberta A. Moore has selected. Technology harbors no more dangers than any other trend in the development of human consciousness. The danger lies not in technology, but in the possibilities awaiting discovery. Roberta, this is gorgeous. Talk to me. How'd you find this?
Well, I am very Jungian oriented in my training and then in the way I live my own life and in the way that I work with some of my clients, those who are open to that type of psychology. And I wanted to choose Jung, not only because his work means so much to me personally, also because he was this colleague of Freud. And at one point, he parted ways with Freud, mostly because of how they did dream interpretation differently. And I am also trained in dream analysis. So basically what this quote means to me is the medium, the platform of technology in and of itself is neither good nor bad, nor positive or negative. Carl Jung always looked at the shadow side of things. So just to use an example, I hear stories all day long from many of my clients who will say, oh, I love being able to go on social media to keep up with my sports scores. I know what my team did. That's a positive. But the shadow side is, but then I have horrible anxiety. The news of what the sports teams are doing or what my friends are doing, and they get FOMO, that new phrase, fear of missing out. Anxiety rates have increased for some of my clients. And so that's the shadow side of the technology. So it's what you do with it. It's what you may stumble upon as technology evolves. Is it gonna take the planet up, or is it gonna take the planet down?
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. Thank you all for selecting such really, really interesting quotes. I appreciate that, the time you all put into it. Now it's time for our predictions, and that's what we're all about here on Technology Revolution. We call the show Tech Rev. So, Chris Kalaboukis, let me take your prediction number one, and let's spend about 90 seconds to 2 minutes explaining your predictions, each one, and we're just going to go around the table, one from each of you, and let's see how many we can cover. If you want to say something about each other's, just dive in or raise your hands and wave them at me. Bonnie, call me. So Chris Kalaboukis sent me the following. Prediction number one, crisis triggers change. In the future, will we engineer crises to trigger change? That's an interesting one. Chris, go. I'm reading it for the first time, really reading it. Chris, talk to me.
Okay, so look at what's happened today with the coronavirus and COVID-19. Actually, that's the same thing, right? People are actually changing. And this is the same thing with humans. Humans will only change when something major happens in their life, typically. So if somebody has a heart attack, they'll stop smoking. Or if something really negative happens, some kind of crisis occurs, that's what really triggers change. And we're seeing it right now with COVID. In fact, one of the things I was thinking about, for example, something like working from home. Working from home is telecommuting is something we've been able to do for years and years and years and years. But a lot of companies haven't embraced it. People are forced to commute. It's a terrible thing health-wise. It's a terrible thing relationship-wise. So this system that we had in place was really bad for humans, this whole commuting thing. So this crisis comes along, and all of a sudden, everybody's forced to work from home. All of a sudden, all these companies are saying, wait a minute, we could have done this. So the crisis actually pushed us to change in a positive way, because now a lot of people are not commuting anymore, and they're much healthier. They've got time to eat better, to exercise more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is, if crises cause change, if we want some kind of change in the future, do we have to engineer? Do we have to create a crisis and use that crisis to help push that change?
Interesting. A guest on one of my other radio shows this week quoted Rahm Emanuel. I don't know if he's the originator of the quote, but he used it. Something about never let a good crisis go to waste. And you've heard that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And never let the manufacturer.
Think of that as a negative. Some people think of that as a negative, but it depends on the kind of change that you're trying to push forward, right? Because the change is actually a response to the crisis. And if you think about it, what we're doing is pivoting, or we're responding to the crisis. And if we can respond to the crisis well, then we'll end up being stronger people.
There you go. And we could say never miss the opportunity to manufacture a crisis, and then don't miss the opportunity to respond to it. If you think, never mind. We not going.
As long as you don't get caught manufacturing it, that's the problem.
No politics. I shouldn't have even gone there. Linda J. Roth, first prediction: individuals born in the digital age, and you can define that, will have higher problem-solving competencies and creative thinking than earlier generations. How does this impact psychology? Go ahead, Linda.
Well, there have been studies that are showing, for a long time we've been talking about how bad video games are and kids being on the internet. And certainly, just like everything, there's a negative side to it and a positive side. There's a lot of studies that are showing that people that from an early age work with digital technologies and even and especially video games or educational things that look like video games, right? That the neural pathways they have for how they solve problems are totally different than those of us that even were born in the industrial age. And so they come up with more creative ideas and they're faster. If you look at millennials in the workplace today, they're much faster. I remember working with organizations and trying to get people to think of different ways to do things, and they just sit there with blank stares on their faces, right? When you work with younger people, they have a million ideas on how to do things differently. So I think that's what we're going to see is a much faster paced and greater ideas coming from technology. I believe that's one of the good things that we have about it. So that was.
Thank you very much. Roberta wants to say something. Roberta, you're up. Talk to me.
The shadow side, I've heard about what you just said, Linda. One of my clients who's a nurse recently attended a conference and they said, our attention spans are now 7 or 8 seconds, like that of a goldfish. For the same reason.
And I had an author on one of my radio shows at least 5 years ago who wrote a book. Our attention span was that of, I think, of not just a goldfish, but a squirrel, which was about 6 or 7 seconds. So yes. And with all of the media, the stimuli coming at us from go on this website, click this and do that, and pop-up ads. And meanwhile, even while I'm on the show now, emails are popping up on the right. I'm ignoring them, and text messages, I'm not looking at them. And you can see alerts, even if you got your phone muted, you can see a little flash of something coming in on your phone, a call, a message. So we are overwhelmed. And those of us who didn't grow up, Linda, in that digital era where we're not cyber natives. Oh, I don't know if I just coined a phrase. We're not cyber natives, but we've had to incorporate that on our psyche, on our mental well-being. How do I respond? What do I do first? Is your life organized? And I like to say, hell no, and this is just the way I like it. Let me respond to whatever. I'll figure it all out. Thank you very much. Jacob, go ahead. Chris?
Can I just... So we just did a study. My company just did a study of the recruiting industry, and we were talking about the attention span of recruiters when they look at resumes, and it's 10 to 15 seconds. 10 to 15 seconds. That's how much time you have to actually impress a recruiter. So if you think about it, we've been doing resumes all wrong. It's just got to be like one small sentence. It's like read the sentences like this very short elevator pitch. So this whole attention span reduction thing has affected many industries across the board, and we really need to work on it.
The top line of your resume should be hire me, damn it. That's it.
Yeah.
Hire me, damn it. Now, you all know that on most systems today, when you're applying for a job, there is an artificial intelligence gateway that you have to go through. If your resume doesn't have those keywords, it never gets to that human with the 15-second scan it. Do we want this person? Hell no. Yes, I can't wait to meet you.
Exactly.
So you
have to write your resume. You have to write your resume for the AI and for humans. Just kind of like blog posts today. Blog posts today have to be written for search engines and humans. Unfortunately, they're mostly written for search engines, which is why recipe sites have blog posts that are this long for a tiny little recipe at the very bottom. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Right. And nobody is proofing recipes anymore because you can get a recipe with 10 ingredients and they leave out the 11th one, which is key when they give you the steps. And
exactly.
Put the ice cubes in the big bowl. Well, it didn't say how many ice cubes, what kinds of bowl. Is it metal? Never mind, I digress. Jacob is waiting patiently. I said that once to a guest and they said to me, how do you know I'm patient? Jacob's first prediction, this is interesting. An increase in the incidence of digital addiction, techno stress, digital anxiety, and cyberbullying, and subsequent affective disorders. You're predicting an increase. Jacob, please unpack this for me.
Well, we've already laid the framework for that right now. FOMO, multiple points of stimulation, an increase in potency for such stimulation, changing the neurobiology in the brain. The reason more affective disorders is because we're more emotionally dysregulated, right? Life was slower absent wide-scale social media and technology, and we could respond with kind of our baseline emotional regulation capabilities, but now we're getting hit again. As I mentioned earlier, our central nervous system is we call it upregulated. It's just more energetic, right? So we've kind of shifted what those natural capacities are. And when we do that, we put ourselves at risk for more anxiety disorder. That's an affective disorder, depression, overall mood disorder. So we're having a lot more affective there's actual time series data. We're having more affective disorders among younger kids. Don't get me wrong, there's large-scale stresses out there in our society, but we're seeing a large drive of that. The use of technology use can account for a large percentage of increase of that type of disorder, right? The reason I put cyberbullying on there is because for me as a frontline practitioner who works with psychiatric populations as well, I'm coming in and seeing kids who aren't necessarily being physically bullied, but they're being bullied in cyberspace, and that's having the exact same impact on their behavior. An affective disorder, typically some sort of depressive disorder, with an anxiety disorder, with, unfortunately, in those situations when I meet with those patients, suicidal symptoms as well, or self-harm. So we're seeing real tangible outcomes to kind of what's going on in these digital spaces, because for these kids, again, developmentally, when those social relationships become important, well, where are you engaging with these social relationships? On all the social media sites, on Facebook, on all these places. Yeah.
Thank you, Jacob. Linda, talk. First Linda, then Roberta. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quickly. While I agree with everything Jacob said, there's a lot of negativity on social media and everything. I think it also comes down to just making sure that parents are teaching children to be kind, not to be mean, same as you would on the playground, right? I mean, in the days when there wasn't technology, parents would teach their children not to be mean on the playground, not to bully people. And unfortunately, it appears that there's not as much emphasis on not doing that in a social media setting.
Thank you. Roberta.
People who also, just to piggyback on what Jacob said, people who already have trouble with impulse control, especially with sex addiction, there is certainly a rise with that because of, things like Tinder being readily available to have hookups. So some of my clients have those issues, and certainly it's like a free-for-all just because it's readily available.
Thank you. And I want to pick up one thing in Jacob's prediction that we didn't, and I'll get to yours next, Roberta. You say you predict an industry rise in the techno wellness movement and personal coaching. And my question for you, Jacob, quick question, because I want to move on, is can a troubled teen today, and any of you can answer this, but first, Jacob, can a troubled teen go and find a cyberpsychologist on their own and make some arrangement with PayPal or Venmo to pay and go and start sessions without parental knowledge, without parental approval, without parental guidance? Could somebody go to you, Roberta, or you, Linda, or you, Chris, or you, Jacob, and engage you as a therapist? Roberta, all right, Jacob, you want to answer this first because it's part of your prediction?
You're a minor. I still legally need consent from the parent. We'll still have to follow our formal protocol for you to access services in whichever state you are located.
What about a personal coach? What if they find a personal coach? Roberta, next. What do you think, Roberta?
Well, I was going to say the same thing as Jacob in terms of keeping your license going by the ethical code. But I guess with a coach, if somebody's unethical or doesn't hold that boundary, of course, legally, though,
there's plenty of.
Can't.
But I don't know if you've probably seen this, but there's plenty of therapy apps online that anybody could just download and start using. In fact, as an experiment, I downloaded something called Replica, and it's not even a therapy app. It's just an AI that you get to chat with. And for some people, that's enough. They just need somebody to communicate with and bounce some ideas off of and just make them feel better about themselves. And that's exactly what this thing does. So no, there's no licensing or anything in that. I mean, if it's an AI, how do you license an AI? You got to look at the algorithms and go, is this thing going to give the right kind of advice in the right kind of situations? And that's very difficult to do.
And
who
dangerous.
would know and who would report you? Roberta, I'm going to combine your first two predictions. They go exactly where we're talking right now. Number one, you say you predict interstate bans for practicing online psychology will be erased. And then your number two prediction is additional training for telemental health will be relaxed to any psychotherapist having a license. Wow. Roberta, tell us more, please.
Well, that's what it is now. So when I wanted to leave North Carolina and move back to St. Louis, I think that was 7 years ago, I went to the Telemental Health Institute. There was and is such a thing to get training. It was online to get training to, what are the protocols? What do you have to have in place to do this ethically and according to my licensure? And a lot of my colleagues, I mean, I was afraid to tell any of my colleagues I was doing this because those that I told would say things like, well, you better be careful of that. You could lose your license. You could get in trouble. Because they used to say, not as much anymore, you can't see somebody's face necessarily the same way you'd see them in your office. You can't read body language the same. You know, for me, that's never been true. I'm very intuitive, and it's kind of like when you're blind, you just develop other sensory skills to pick up other things. So I've always been a proponent of it. I think it's very exciting. Different states have had different laws, so that's why I keep my North and South Carolina licensees, because right now pre-COVID, you had to have a license in the state you were and a license to practice in the state the client's in. And if you don't, you're afoul of interstate regulatory laws. Now, because we have the pandemic, that's been relaxed. You can practice interstate. And if you have a license, you don't need the additional training or certificate. Now, that's during the time of COVID, but I have a hard time thinking, how are they going to roll that back? You know, when the pandemic's over, how are they going to take those relationships that's already been created between therapist and client away?
They're not. I don't think they are.
Jacob,
which is exciting to me. That's the right answer. That's what I'm hoping.
I think the general population supports what we've seen with telemedicine. Again, a lot of the states have kind of piecemeal practices, and not a lot of states have reciprocity across all the kind of helping professions, psychologists, clinical social workers, counseling, LMFTs. Building kind of a reciprocity exchange. Here's a good point. My partner's a clinical psychologist. I'll be driving to Florida to pick her up in 3 weeks and bring her back to St. Louis, where she has a job. She is a strong provider, specializes in PTSD in women and trauma. She's utilized telemedicine with the VA since the onset of the pandemic. Trying to get licensed in multiple states would take her probably over 2 years, right?
Yeah.
You have 3 exams in the state of Missouri alone just to practice in Missouri, and then there's multiple exams in every state. There isn't a national identification base so that you can just practice in the continental United States. It doesn't exist. Every state has their own barriers. So if we're going to expand these telemed platforms, we're going to stick within the law, has to catch up, and then that has to reflect it in the professional ethics for each respective body.
Fascinating. I want to move on to, we're going to do round 2 of predictions. Let's see what we could do about 4 hours on this topic. I think this is
easily
a Pandora's minefield of interesting perspectives here. We might have to do a part 2 later in the year, so expect an invitation. Chris Kalabukas, prediction number 2. I love this one. Everyone will have a friend, capital F, and quote marks around it, air quotes. An intimate AI companion who or which helps them live their life. Chris, let's keep this to about 90 seconds. I want to cover another round of predictions. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, no worries. This is a little bit like what I was saying earlier. Right now, what we get is fed to us. Everything that comes into our stream is fed to us by these tech companies. So we need something to filter and help us sort of deal with the rest of the world. So the concept is that there'll be this intimate AI friend, which sort of lives in your earbuds or in your phone or whatever. And they're on your side. They're not on the side of the tech companies. They're not on the side of Amazon or Facebook or whoever's pushing stuff at you. They're there to help you. So you talk to them and they talk to you. So whenever situations come along, it's like your own personal therapist, friend, buddy, anything, emotional support animal, whatever. But they're in your ears. They're talking. They're listening to everything that comes in. They're filtering things out for you, and they're helping you. Helping you soothe yourself as you need to be soothed. And I think we need something like this because we're getting to a point now where technology is accelerated to the speed that human beings can't handle it anymore. Where it's already beyond us. It's already beyond us, and it's already controlling us. So we really need somebody on our side to help us deal with it all.
Thank you very much. Brief. Oh, we've got a bunch of hands here. Who did I see? Jacob.
No, I agree. I'm thinking augmented positive self-talk is what I'm hearing. It's really it's an advocacy bot. That's what it is. But it's a one that's constant with your stream of consciousness.
Affirmation.
It can catch your logical fallacies and stop a process that might get you more dysregulated. So it can keep you from having those processes that I outlined earlier.
Linda, you want to
and if you think about it, I mean, Sorry, one more thing on what you were saying. It's like, if you think about what's out there that's coming at you, all these messages, 99% of them are not really real. They're fake, right? And all this, like, who filters out the fake stuff? And right now we can't. We just get everything thrown at us, and, we believe it in different ways. So it would be great if we could have something stopping these things and saying, this is true, this is not true. Don't listen to this, listen to this. And anyway, sorry, Linda, didn't mean to step in on you.
And there's algorithm bias on who wrote the algorithm to filter out the true versus the fake. And then you've got another layer of what human created that. Linda, you want to say something, please?
Well, I just wanted to say quickly, I was talking to my niece in preparation for this yesterday. She works with special education. And I was talking to her about technology, and I like your idea, because a lot of times people with special needs, right, they really need to have some calming thing, somebody to help them calm down. And so I think that would be a great idea, especially for people in the special needs area.
Thank you very much.
It'll start there, but eventually it'll go to everybody, because it'll be so useful. It'll help everyone.
I want to go to Linda's prediction number 2. Let's keep this brief. The digital age will create challenges for mental and physical health in terms of isolation as the trend toward virtual work and school environments increases. I have a friend in Florida who's retired. She reads, she goes for long walks, she plays the drums, she takes a Skype lesson a couple times a week, married, has a wonderful life, plays, what does she play? She plays bridge with other couples, she and her husband, on Trickster. I think there's a website where you can play card games online in real time. She's on Jam Kazam, and she cries every single day because of what she sees, the isolation. She can't go to the clubhouse in her community, and she can't sit down at a dinner table in restaurants. She's in Florida. I don't have to tell you what the pandemic's doing there in a 55 plus. Linda, please explain this briefly, and then we'll tee up one from Jacob and one from Roberta. Linda, you're up.
You did a good job with it. The pandemic is a perfect example of how extreme isolation is hurting humans, even with the technology we have. Human beings, like all beings, you can see it in the animal kingdom too, we have to have touch. We have to have interaction to be psychologically healthy. So we're going to have to balance our techno world with still being able to have an ability to socialize with people in real time, touch them, feel them, and talk to them one-on-one. So it's going to be a balance. It can't be all virtual.
Thank you very much. Jacob, I'm moving on to your prediction number 4. I like this one a lot. You say yourself, identity, and dating practices. Ooh, access, affordability, anonymity, acceptability, and approximation. That's a lot of A's there, Jacob. Full sensory VR, virtual reality dating with live feedback loops supported by big data and integrative neurocomputer interface. And that would check the user's dopamine and oxytocin levels. That's the love drug, the kissing drug. Oxygen saturation, blood pressure, etc. Can you unpack this in about 90 seconds? Because I want to get one from Roberta, and then we got to wrap. Go ahead, Jacob. This is fascinating.
The future of online dating companies will be much more integrated and collect a lot more big data, right? So VR dating, the ability for me to have a date, not just to have a message back and forth like on Tinder or some of the other digital platforms, but to actually have a virtual reality date and or experience different forms of stimuli in there and measure the actual data. The reason why I put anonymity is because we're collecting that level of big data, and let's say I click on a box where I share it with you or in the company, we can, I'm not being what's that term where you're dating someone, catfished? I'm not being lied to. The face and the person who's there with me in that VR dating experience is the real deal, right? And you can't really lie from some of those biological indicators. So we have the technology to produce that virtual reality date. We have technology to collect that big data. And if I could put a guarantee on it, oh my gosh, there's some real things going on here, especially with that love drug, kissing drug that we just mentioned that's actually being tracked. That would be beneficial. Yeah.
Well, we see in a lot of our drama TV shows, we see somebody being hooked up to a lie detector, or in a hospital, a blood pressure machine, and a certain nurse walks in the room and the guy's blood pressure goes whoop, and they say, "Oh, you got a crush on Nurse Mary." I'm watching Nurse Jackie, and I saw that. Anyway.
So if the AI is tracking that, and there's an index for truthfulness derived from some of these biomarkers that is being fed live, I'll take that. Especially if it's a VR date.
I want to go to a prediction from Roberta. I'm looking at number 3. This is interesting, and this impacts everybody in the psychology professional community. She says more client sessions will be conducted online. The majority of psychotherapists will let go of their office space and practice from home. Now, that goes back to isolation, not being the therapist is isolated. The therapist is working from home. The therapist, what does it look like? What does your background look like? What kind of an image are you projecting if you're doing it on Zoom or Skype with with the visuals? Roberta, talk. We've got 6 minutes left to the show, so why don't you take about 2 minutes? This is a good one. Go ahead, Roberta.
Thank you. Well, I'm already seeing this. I still go to my building where my office is in the afternoons, and I'm the only one there. I don't see anybody else, and it's a building with a lot of psychotherapists in it and healthcare workers, and I never see a soul. So I think, people, a lot of us who are in this field have ads on Psychology Today, and Psychology Today sent an email out a few months back saying, make sure you if you're doing telemental health, that's on your profile, so new clients know that you're taking new clients and you're taking them virtually. And I've already had a lot of colleagues saying, well, why do I need an office anymore? I don't need an office. Now, one of the things you kind of touched on, Bonnie, it used to be in the, let's say, pre-COVID days, practitioners were worried about clients' confidentiality on the other side. Mm-hmm. Meaning if they were they in a private space, in their homes, or would somebody walk in on them, or could they be hacked? The platforms are getting a little better, the HIPAA compliant platforms in my experience. But I also want to just touch on something Jacob said, if I may. In St. Louis, there was already a startup company, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know if it's still out there, called the Invisible Girlfriend. And that's what it was. The lawyer who started it gave you a girlfriend who was invisible, but she would send you even birthday presents. And he in his college, I guess he dreamt it up while he was in college to get your parent off your back if you didn't have a girlfriend. Or if you weren't married yet, you could have this artificial pretend girlfriend.
Yeah, that's happening huge. Apparently, that's huge in Japan. That's been, there's like little robots you can buy that'll send you emails during the day saying, "Oh, I can't wait for you to get home. I think you're awesome, and what should we have for dinner?" And
friend to friend, subscribe to a friend. Roberta, the last time I was when I was on Long Island, I was going from therapist to therapist looking for somebody I was compatible with. And this particular gentleman and I just didn't gel, but he had an office in a shared space where there were 5 doors, what's behind door number 1? Well, somebody in that office suite brought back lunch from, I think, an Asian restaurant, and the garlic and the oil and the fried smell, and it permeated the entire place, and it was crazy annoying. Well, I didn't want to see him anymore, and somebody recommended another therapist to me. I didn't know she was in that same office suite, so I went into the waiting room 2 weeks later. He walks in with a bag he was out to lunch, and I'm sitting in a chair going, it was winter. I pulled my hat and scarf over my head. I buried myself. I didn't want him to see that I was there to talk to one of the people in the next.
See, this would be avoided if everything's online.
Those days are over, aren't they? Absolutely. I want to thank my panel. We're just about out of time. You've all been wonderful. I can't remember such a chatty roundtable on any of my shows because you're all so engaging and engaged in the topic, and I really appreciate it. Listen, we all want mental health at some level. The question is, how crazy do you want to be, and you're going to allow yourself to be, and where is help available, and who is the right person to help you? Is it a coach? Is it a trainer? Is it I'm a coach but not a therapist? Is it a therapist but not a psychiatrist? Do they dispense meds? Don't they? Are they an MS? Are they an M? All the different letters. I've had therapists personally who were PhDs. And a psychiatrist when I was very little, and I've had ones who are masters of social work, and I'm always wondering which level of training is right for me. I need to be engaged in a physical setting, no more. So I may be calling one of you soon. I want to thank all of you. It's been a very lively session. Chris Kalaboukis, always a pleasure. Jacob Perkins, I know you haven't been feeling well, but we're so glad. Green as you are, Mr. Hook, Dr. Hook, we're happy to have you here. That's not how you're feeling. Linda J. Roth, you're wonderful. And thank you so much for the introduction to Roberta A. Moore. Roberta, you were a wonderful addition addition to the panel. We have 1 minute left. So I'm going to have everybody just wave and say goodbye. And let's just wish everybody to be safe, to be smart, to be savvy. And I'm going to say it, if you're going to be in a social setting, in a physical setting, wear your damn mask. That's all I'm going to say. That's from me. That's not from anybody else. Everybody wave. Thank you. Remember, the future.
Thank you so much.
Now didn't happen. If somebody says the future is here, that's yesterday's future. Get over yourself. We're
That's
all here
right.
to make the future of now happen. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for Technology Revolution, the future of now. Mark your calendar to join host Bonnie D. Graham every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Voice America Business Channel to hear how technology is impacting your future now.